Welcome everyone to the Psych Talk for today. Today we will be talking about procrastination. Sort of follows on from our previous talk on perfectionism. Although perfectionism is one part of or one factor that can lead to procrastination, procrastination has a lot more aspects to it than just what's the point of getting started if I can't do it right, that may be from perfectionism. So one of the big differences, of course, is that while perfectionism is often seen as a positive, with, of course, the problems and the issues with perfectionism discussed in our previous talk, procrastination is almost always seen as negative. Which I guess is true. However, procrastination also comes with a lot of judgment, both internally, so self-judgment, as well as external judgment from other people who see procrastination as, let's say, lazy, the opposite of hardworking. Right? They see it as procrastination is often seen as a bad habit, and of course, this kind of criticism is probably warranted in many circumstances, but it can be unhelpful when, again, as I said, there's more to procrastination than just what it looks like, which might be some kind of bad habit that comes across as unconscientious, maybe lazy. So the purpose of today's talk is to go through I guess what we mean by procrastination, and a bit of a model as to how procrastination might work for people, where I try and tease apart some of the aspects of procrastination that aren't always considered when people engage in procrastination, because procrastinating is often habitual, it's often automatic, sometimes it's not even conscious when we do it. So just to tease apart some of the aspects of procrastination, and in understanding how procrastination works, hopefully to give people some avenues where they can check themselves if they are engaging in unhelpful procrastination. So, as usual, these talks are intended to provide information and education only. They're not meant for diagnosis or treatment. If you are experiencing any distressing symptoms or want more information, please visit a mental health professional in your local area. So, what do we mean by procrastination? Well, I think everyone would have some sort of an idea of what procrastination means to them. In this circumstance, if we want to put a concrete sort of definition around it, we're talking about delaying or not completing a task or goal that you've committed to, usually, and making that decision for without a valid reason, and instead of doing the task or goal, doing something else of lesser importance, and most importantly, despite there being negative consequences of not following through with the original task. There's a few components there, and I'll go back to them in discussing other points about procrastination, but the main focus is that there's a decision, whether conscious or so it's an intentional decision, usually procrastination. Although it can be conscious or subconscious, can be habit and automatic, but it's usually an intentional decision. There's usually a needless put off or delay to the task, so it's not a emergency or urgent priority that puts off the task. It's generally a needless delay, and generally it's for something that's less important than the original task. And you do this despite there being lots of disadvantages to procrastinating, usually, so that's the sort of final point. And probably one of the biggest differences between what we would say is mild procrastination and more serious procrastination is how severe the negative consequences are of delaying that task. So I'll just put up the graphic here. The way we're going to talk about procrastination today is in the form of this cycle, the procrastination cycle. Now, this is not the only way to talk about procrastination. Certainly, there are a lot of different variations on this procrastination cycle, but this is probably the version that I think gives the best description of the components of procrastination. So, if we go through each step, I guess, in the process, I'll give a more detailed explanation of each of them as we go through. So, firstly, well, we have tasks, right? That life consists of a lot of different things that we have to do, and not everything is commonly procrastinated. So, what are some of the things that people commonly procrastinate about? Well, there are a huge variety. Not all of procrastinating on these tasks doesn't necessarily mean it's a problem for people, but I would encourage people to consider, as we go through all of the examples that I'll give of tasks that people often procrastinate on, maybe consider some of the possible negative consequences of not following through on these. So, for instance, procrastination on work-related activities. So, deadlines, starting or finishing projects, procrastinating on making phone calls, on arranging meetings, on applying for jobs, on doing research or reading, procrastination on study-based tasks. Again, deadlines, right? Attending classes, procrastination on homework, assignments, projects. You can imagine the negative consequences on all of these. Procrastination on studying for exams, again on research or reading related to study. Procrastination on household activities, so procrastination on chores, big or small, around the house, and cleaning, procrastination on bigger household projects, procrastination on maintenance and fixing things, which might lead to bigger problems later on, or it might lead to reduced quality of life while certain appliances are not available. Procrastination on grocery shopping, which might lead to reduction in the quality of meals and nutrition. Procrastination on errands, gardening, etc. Also, procrastination on health-related activities. So, making and attending health appointments, doctor's appointments, mental health appointments can have negative impacts, certainly with chronic conditions. Procrastination on exercise happens to the best of us. Procrastination on sticking to treatment regimes or ones that might be agreed to with a health professional, or maybe just ones that you want to do yourself in terms of things like changing your diet, losing weight, but taking medication also. Some people will procrastinate on that. And procrastinating on quitting smoking, alcohol, drugs, other negative coping strategies. We can engage in financial procrastination. So, opening mail and paying bills. It's quite common to see people procrastinate on paying bills, fines in particular as well. Procrastinating on budgeting, on tax returns, and procrastinating on paying back debt is often a common one as well. In terms of relationships, we often procrastinate in terms of sending messages. That's quite a common one, to friends, to loved ones, to partners. We procrastinate on replying to invitations, particularly if we're a little bit socially anxious, or we're ambivalent about whether we want to go to something or not. We procrastinate on arranging gatherings and attending gatherings. We procrastinate sometimes on spending time with others, and in particular with relationships, we often procrastinate on discussing problems, leading to the very commonly used phrase of having an elephant in the room. In terms of self-development, we often procrastinate on starting a new course, starting a new hobby. We procrastinate on learning a skill, right? How many times have someone said, well, I'm going to learn that instrument, I'm going to learn guitar, I'm going to watch videos on how to paint, I'm going to I'm going to go start that sport that I've always really wanted to, join a club. And often we also, not always, but sometimes we get too busy and we procrastinate on things like leisure and relaxation. So I'll take a day off at some point. I'll spend time with the family at some point. I'll look after myself at some stage. I'll take a sick day when I'm really sick. And finally, just in general on decision making. So committing to something new, choosing between options. Sometimes having to make a choice that just makes us procrastinate already. The discomfort of having to do that. So of course, going through all of those, procrastination is quite common, of course. Probably all of us can identify with at least one of those that we've engaged in. Of course, the problem with procrastination is particularly for people who procrastinate on multiple fronts. Because the negative consequences, while maybe small for one of those fronts, can certainly pile up and add up, become a big problem that starts affecting your quality of life. So now we've talked about number one, the tasks that we might procrastinate on. We go to unhelpful rules and assumptions, right? So why do we procrastinate? This is part of number one is, what do we procrastinate on? Well, why do we procrastinate on many of these tasks? Well, firstly, we often have very unhelpful rules and assumptions that we've built around how we do things, how we operate, and how we run our lives. Some of these can be activated when we have tasks that make us uncomfortable, right? So that's number three, perceived discomfort. But 2 and 3 are often, they can be interchangeable. So sometimes the discomfort comes first. Sometimes the unhelpful rules and assumptions are activated first, then we feel the discomfort because of those unhelpful rules and assumptions. So, what are some unhelpful rules and assumptions? Well, One of them is fear of failure or disapproval. Right? So this is where perfectionism comes in. If you have a lot of pressure to complete tasks or goals to a very high standard, the fear of falling short of those standards or of disapproval from others can lead to the putting off of tasks. One of the thoughts might be, I can't be judged either by myself or others if I don't attempt the task in the first place. Right? Often you will hear people saying, oh, well, I didn't try anyway, so the result doesn't matter because I didn't put my maximum effort, I didn't even put minimum effort into it. As almost a defense, a preemptive defense of any judgment or criticism that they might receive. So fear of failure or disapproval is a possible unhelpful rule/assumption. Also fear of uncertainty or catastrophe. So for some people it's the fear of the uncertain, fear of change, fear of the unknown. So it might be something like along the lines of, I'm better off not doing anything than risk making things worse, than risk changing the status quo. As an example, I'm better off not knowing about any health issues, I'm better off not getting any health checkups, because ignorance is bliss. What if I go for a checkup and they find something? So procrastination in that sense maintains the status quo and increases the certainty and predictability of the future, even if only temporarily. For some people, the reason they might procrastinate on tasks is low self-confidence. Some people genuinely doubt their own abilities and they lack confidence in their capacity or capability to perform tasks or reach their goals. In which case the worry might be, well, if I try, my inadequacies will show through. If I try, I'm going to look stupid, I'm going to look like an idiot, and other people will see that. I'm going to embarrass myself if I try. I'm just not good at X, Y, Z. I'm just not good at sport. I'm just not good at studying. What's the point in attempting the task? And this is particularly relevant for taking on new things, right? The anxiety, the worry is generally a bit less for things that people have attempted before because they have past results to fall back on to predict how they will go. For new things, if someone doesn't have a lot of confidence in their own abilities, new work responsibilities, starting a new course or hobby, asking for help, that fear of failure, in this sense, compared to a perfectionist, right? A perfectionist is different. A perfectionist puts unnecessary pressure on themselves to reach a very high standard. In this case, for people who don't have a lot of confidence in themselves, it's the fear of failure, but a genuine fear of failure, rather than fear of failing to live up to a high standard, right? So for someone with an unhelpful assumption that they are not good at things, never putting yourself in a challenging situation avoids having to face any inadequacies or weaknesses that they might think they have. And some other reasons, some other unhelpful rules and assumptions that might encourage procrastination. One of them might be pleasure seeking. For some people, it's, life is too short to be doing things that are boring or hard. That might be the rule or assumption, that boredom is the ultimate enemy. I don't want to be bored. Fun should come first. Some people might have difficulty with things like patience, tolerating boredom, focusing on long-term goals. Others, it might be low motivation and low energy. So people who have maybe highly stressful work lives, or have to give a lot of care to, they act in a carer role for those around them already. They may not have the energy to perform some of those tasks, and that might turn into an excuse for them. If you see number 4 on the model, it might turn into an excuse. I'm not saying that there isn't a genuine need, of course, for rebuilding energy, and putting things off till later might help do that. But if there are negative consequences piling up of, for instance, procrastinating on financial tasks, procrastinating on health-related tasks, then that might not actually be helpful. Even if it's a legitimate excuse that you're lacking in sleep, you're lacking in good diet practices, or you've got a lot of stress going on for legitimate reasons, it still doesn't make procrastination helpful on other tasks. So we talk about perceived discomfort that comes with a lot of these unhelpful thoughts and assumptions. Well, often the discomfort is things like frustration. The discomfort can be fear, it can be anxiety, worry, all of those things. It can be boredom as well. So the perceived discomfort is often real, it's often felt, but it can also be anticipatory, right? So anticipating having a bad time at a gathering, anticipating that you will feel very anxious and frustrated when you try to do a project or a piece of work, because you won't be able to meet the standard that you've set yourself. Even if you haven't felt it, you're not even doing the task yet, you still perceive that there will be discomfort, and that's enough to make you engage in number 4, the excuses. Now again, they're excuses because that's the description of what they are. It's not a judgment to say that these are procrastination excuses. But these are often the things that we probably could/should call ourselves out on, right? Unhelpful rules and assumptions may be a part of our upbringing, a part of our lives, a part of how we structure our environment. Tasks are often unavoidable, they're part of our everyday experience. The discomfort is normal, right? Everyone feels anxious, almost everyone feels anxious about starting new things, about a high-pressure project, about applying for a job. The excuses are where often we maybe do have a choice. Although a lot of the times the excuses are automatic, maybe subconscious, or barely consciously entering into our minds before we move on to the procrastination activities. So some examples of procrastination excuses include: I'm too tired, I'll do it tomorrow. I don't have everything I need, I can't really start it now. I don't have time to do all of it, so maybe I'll wait until I've got more spare time in a big chunk. Well, it's too late to start it now anyway, so what's the point? I wouldn't be able to do it properly with the little time I've got left. I won't get much done right now because I'm distracted by other things and there's too much on my plate, so I'll just leave it until a better time. It's better to do it when I'm in the mood or feeling inspired. I'll miss out on another fun activity that might be happening right now, so I'm going to go do that first and then I'm going to start this later. it's 2 nights a day to spend time on this project. I'd rather go for a walk or go to the beach. I will do it once this other less important thing is finished. So, I've been meaning to clean my room for a while. I've been meaning to mow the lawn for a while. So I'll go do that first. I have plenty of time, so I can always do it later. Sort of almost the opposite of a lot of the ones with, the excuses we've heard previously. I work better when I'm stressed, so maybe it's better to leave it to the last minute. I might not be good enough, so why bother? And I'm just too busy. Right, so those are some examples. I'm sure we can come up with a lot more that maybe we've used ourselves. But that's some examples about the kinds of excuses that we tell ourselves in order to justify and promote procrastination. And again, it's not a judgment to call them excuses. Everybody pretty much engages with these at some point. And it's very tempting to engage with them. Now, that leads us on to sort of how do we procrastinate, right? So we've talked about what are the things we might procrastinate on. We've talked about why we might procrastinate. How do we do it? Well, again, a lot of these will be parts of people's experiences and will resonate with some people, maybe more than others, but usually what we do is we substitute an important task or goal, right, the thing that we should be doing, based on life priorities, with another activity that generally isn't as much a priority, so it's generally less important, but generally has more short-term positives. So maybe it's fun or exciting, or it's less hard, so we're more likely to complete it. And generally it has less or no negative consequences, but we do it anyway because of the short-term positives. So this can be things like pleasurable tasks, video games, movies, TV shows, anime, reading books, reading the news. So again, these are things we do instead of the tasks in number one, the first part of the model, that we probably ought to be doing. Browsing the internet, Twitch, YouTube, TikTok, even Wikipedia. We may go shopping, we may go to the beach, we may engage with some of our current hobbies. So those are some examples of pleasurable tasks we might engage in to procrastinate. We might engage in lower priority tasks that still give us a sense of achievement, right? So we still get that sense of achievement, but it's not the same as if we actually, say, finished our project that we need to. These can involve exercising, these can involve paperwork or admin, so some people will engage in admin work, data entry work, rather than a more creative task that they need to complete for their work. Sorting things, tidying and cleaning, again, all give us a sense of achievement when we do them. Researching personal topics of interest rather than a topic of interest for a particular job or study, or checking emails. Replying to emails is quite a common procrastination tactic as well. We might engage in socializing. So instead of, instead of working on some projects that we probably ought to be, we communicate electronically or go out with family, friends, partner. And often people will maybe stay out longer or later than they normally would, again, as a way of procrastinating. Daydreaming and ruminating as well. So thinking about the past, thinking about the future, imagining that a task is finished and what that might be like. Imagining a better life, imagining what would happen if you had a genie and 3 wishes, imagining what would happen if you won the lotto. All of these are activities that are much more pleasant, certainly in the short term, than sitting down and trying to finish a piece of work, for instance. And we can engage in distractions like eating, napping, sleeping, coping strategies like taking a bath or a shower, going for a walk, and of course less helpful strategies like alcohol, smoking, drugs. Right? Now, of course, not all of these activities are bad per se, right? Socializing is not necessarily bad. Sorting and tidying things is not necessarily bad at all. Reading books, engaging in TV shows, going to the beach, going shopping, they're not bad activities. The problem is we need balance, and engaging in less important activities as a way to substitute for more important tasks is unhelpful, especially if there are long-term negative consequences, as in number 7 of the model. So as we go through, as we do these procrastination activities, of course there are short-term rewards. That's why we engage with them, right? That's why our brains choose these activities instead of engaging with the other tasks that have a perceived discomfort attached to them. So short-term rewards often act to relieve the discomfort, whether perceived or real, that the original tasks bring up. So as we said, they can bring up fear, anxiety, boredom, frustration. So some of these procrastination activities act to relieve those discomforts, right? If you are engaged in a movie, a TV show, a video game, a book, you get to not be as anxious or fearful of the tasks that you did have. Now, of course, that's only short term, but it does work. It works quite well to distract you. Again, having a nap, eating comfort food, work quite well to relieve those discomforting feelings, discomforting thoughts from your unhelpful rules and assumptions around being not good enough, around the fear of failure, that sort of thing, right? These procrastination activities are helpful in the short term against those negative discomforts. And procrastination effectively is a avoidance strategy. So it allows avoidance of negative feelings and negative thoughts associated with certain tasks by engaging with other tasks. You can also gain pleasure, right? Some of those tasks give a sense of leisure, a sense of pleasure, a sense of achievement as well. And a lot of the short-term reward from procrastination activities serve to reinforce the rules and assumptions that we have, which is unfortunate because it does make us more likely to engage in unhelpful rules and assumptions in the future, right? Which again reinforces this sort of cycle. So we know there are short-term rewards, but of course we know one of the big problems with procrastination is that there are longer-term consequences. And what does that include? Well, often the discomfort relief is temporary. Because the task remains uncompleted, even if you block out the fear, the anxiety, the boredom, the frustration in the short term. In the long term, that's going to still be there. It may be worse, and you've also added on other negative feelings like guilt, shame from your choices, your choice to procrastinate. Often the sense of worry or anxiety you have will increase, and you may also start feeling despair or feeling overwhelmed at how much the tasks have piled on. Again, the reinforcement of the unhelpful rules and assumptions is often unhelpful because it means you're more likely, when you do have future tasks, to slip back into this unhelpful procrastination cycle. Longer-term consequences of procrastination also often include self-criticism. We will often criticize ourselves for engaging in procrastination, which again is not really helpful to getting the task done in the first place. Often when we criticize ourselves, we jump straight back into having perceived discomfort and making more procrastination excuses. You have even less time as things pile up, right? Doing procrastination activities don't progress the main task, so you've spent time that you already didn't have, and then the task piles on. And often there is punishment or loss associated with not completing those tasks, so particularly the financial ones, not paying bills, but the job ones as well. You may lose a chance for a promotion, you may lose a job because you procrastinated on a task. You may not get the marks that you wanted and get into the course that you wanted, or the further study that you wanted because you procrastinated. There may be health issues because of procrastination on health-related activities. And you could miss out on opportunities. If you procrastinate on, say, a job application, often that will tend to delay, or maybe you'll have to forego opportunities that could have been quite helpful to you progressing your career. And I guess the most important part, as I said before, is that even though procrastination activities can give you short-term rewards, they can give you a positive feelings in the short term. They can give you a sense of achievement, right? Let's say your procrastination activity is a hobby that you really enjoy, like playing the piano, or maybe it's playing a sport, right? You can get a sense of achievement from those. They can be, you can still progress in terms of skills. But procrastination activities never contribute towards the original task, and this is always going to be the problem of this cycle. It doesn't matter how rewarding your procrastination activities are, it doesn't matter how pertinent your procrastination excuses are, the original task is not progressed. And the original task, when we talk about the procrastination cycle, is generally an important one. So at some point, we do need to deal with that and the perceived discomforts associated with that, despite us having maybe good reasons not to want to deal with it. As I said, procrastination is an avoidance strategy at the end of the day. But problems are not solved generally by avoidance. So at the end of the day, unfortunately, procrastination, doesn't lead to a resolving of the task, and that's why the cycle is the way it is, because the long-term negative consequences, you suffer those, and then you go right back having to complete the original task or tasks because they still remain. which again will activate those unhelpful rules and assumptions, which again will lead to a perceived discomfort, anxiety, frustration. And we're back to excuses, we're back to procrastination activities. So I know that with my talks, I don't generally go into necessarily strategies to combat the problems that I'm discussing, but hopefully this talk has helped clarify for you what procrastination is, how we procrastinate, why we might procrastinate, and it's more about building an understanding of everyone's personal experiences of procrastination, so that maybe you have the insight to be able to pick which parts you can intervene yourself, because it's difficult to pick apart particular aspects of this that are important for everybody. For some people, it is about just taking action. For some people, taking small steps is the way that they find most helpful to tackling procrastination in their lives. For other people, it's about tackling the unhelpful rules and assumptions, tackling unhelpful thoughts. For some people, it's about being able to sit with discomfort, right? Being able to feel bored, feel anxious, and still sit through that and complete a task. For other people, it's about calling themselves out on their procrastination excuses. Not letting those slide and becoming automatic, but checking themselves at the excuses to say, hey, that's, that's probably not realistic. That's probably not helpful, right? Something like, if I don't have enough time to do it all, I'll wait until I do. If I don't have anything I need, I can't start it anyway, right? Calling yourself out on those excuses. For some people, that's maybe more helpful. For some people, it's about changing their procrastination activities, right? Changing the length, duration of those, changing how often they engage with the activities, and therefore changing the amount of time spent on those might give them more time to spend back on the original task. Right? So, for different people, there are different elements and aspects of the model where you might be able to find a way to intervene with your own experience. But again, just a reminder that this talk is intended to provide information and education only. It's not meant for diagnosis or treatment. If you are experiencing distressing symptoms or are concerned or want more information, please visit a mental health professional in your area. And just to finish off, as always, with a few quotes, sort of relevant to procrastination that I quite like. The first one is from Benjamin Franklin, as we all know, the American polymath, scientist, inventor, and statesman. He says, "You may delay, but time will not." Right, so you can procrastinate all you want, but time moves on, and deadlines don't wait. Also, the second quote from Christopher Parker, an English actor and television presenter. "Procrastination is like a credit card. It's a lot of fun until you get the bill." So that one talks a bit more about the short-term rewards, being like a credit card, right? Again, procrastination activities are tempting. They're fun, often. They're rewarding. They can give you a sense of achievement. They can give you a sense of pleasure. And compared to the discomfort of having to complete some of the important tasks that we are procrastinating on, They might, the procrastination activities might look great, but it's a lot of fun until you get the bill, and the bill is the long-term negative consequences of procrastination. And just as a bit of to take a bit of a step back from any self-criticism and any guilt and shame people might have around procrastinating, Julia Cameron, the American teacher, author, playwright, novelist, filmmaker, and journalist, wrote, "Procrastination is not laziness. It's fear. Call it by its right name and forgive yourself." So that's more about understanding that procrastination is not a character deficit. It's not something that you need to be, again, ashamed or guilty about. It's something to acknowledge that we all do, forgive yourself for it, and work through it. Thanks for listening to the Psych Talk, and I'll catch you in the next one.